She stood at the pharmacy counter with trembling hands, staring at the prescription she couldn't afford. The pharmacist waited for an answer, and all she could whisper was, "Please. Just make it fast." She wasn't talking about the transaction. She was talking about something else entirely. Something that would change everything. And the man standing behind her in line, a single dad with his daughter's hand in his, heard every word. Before we go any further, I want to invite you to join our Sage Stories family. If these stories touch your heart, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Your voice matters here. Now let's get back to the story. Her name was Angela, and she was 52 years old, though most days she felt twice that. She worked the early morning shift at a grocery store on the south side of Detroit, stocking shelves before the sun came up, smiling at customers even when her feet ached and her back screamed for rest. She'd been doing it for 11 years, ever since her husband passed and left her with medical bills that seemed to multiply in the dark. She never complained. That wasn't who she was. She just kept moving, kept working, kept showing up. But lately, showing up had become harder. The headaches started 6 months ago. Dull at first, easy to ignore. Then they grew sharper, meaner, stealing her sleep and blurring her vision. She told herself it was stress. Too many shifts. Not enough water. The usual excuses we all make when we're scared to face the truth. But when she collapsed in the break room one Tuesday morning, her manager called an ambulance, and the truth came whether she was ready or not. The doctor's office was cold and sterile, the kind of place where bad news feels even heavier. The neurologist, a woman with kind eyes and a tired smile, showed Angela the scans. There was a mass, a tumor pressing against the parts of her brain that controlled movement and speech. Operable, the doctor said, but not without risk. And not without cost. Even with her insurance, the out-of-pocket expenses would be devastating. The medications alone, the ones she'd need before and after surgery, came to nearly $4,000. Angela sat in that office and felt the world tilt. She had $800 in her savings account. $800 between her and homelessness. Between her and losing the small apartment she'd worked so hard to keep. She nodded as the doctor talked about payment plans and assistance programs, but the words sounded distant, like they were meant for someone else. Someone with options, someone with family who could help. Angela had a sister in Arizona who hadn't returned her calls in 3 years and a son in California chasing dreams she hoped he'd catch. She wasn't going to burden him with this. She wasn't going to burden anyone. So she walked out of that office with a prescription decision forming in her mind. A decision that felt both impossible and inevitable. If she couldn't afford the medication, she couldn't have the surgery. And if she couldn't have the surgery, well, the tumor would decide her future for her. At least it would be fast. At least she wouldn't watch her savings disappear and her dignity crumble in her life, reduced to a burden on people who barely had enough themselves. She went to the pharmacy on a Thursday evening, right after her shift. She chose the one across town, the one where nobody knew her name, where she could be invisible. She handed the prescription to the pharmacist, a young man with a nose ring and a bored expression, and waited while he typed and clicked and disappeared into the back. When he returned, he said the total without looking up. $3,862. Angela felt her throat close. She'd known it would be high, but hearing the number out loud made it real in a way that hurt. She opened her wallet slowly, stalling. And that's when she said it, quietly, almost to herself. "Please, just make it fast." The pharmacist frowned. "Ma'am?" She looked up at him, and for a moment she considered explaining. Considered telling him that she wasn't asking for the transaction to be quick. She was asking the universe, God, fate, whatever was listening, to make the end fast when it came. To not drag it out, to let her go with some shred of grace. But instead she just shook her head and said, "I can't afford this. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have wasted your time." She turned to leave, and that's when she saw him. A man in his mid-30s, holding the hand of a little girl with pigtails and light-up sneakers. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe. Or pity. She hated pity. She moved past him quickly, keeping her head down, willing herself not to cry until she made it to her car. But before she reached the door, she heard his voice. "Excuse me." She stopped. Didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said, closer now. "I don't mean to intrude, but I couldn't help overhearing." "Are you okay?" Angela swallowed hard. I'm fine. Thank you. You don't seem fine. She turned then, ready to tell him to mind his business, but the look on his face stopped her. There was no judgment there. No condescension. Just genuine concern. The kind you don't see much anymore. His daughter tugged on his sleeve, whispering something, and he bent down to listen before straightening up again. My name's Marcus, he said. This is my daughter, Zoe. We were just picking up her allergy medication. But if you need help with something, maybe I can... I don't need charity, Angela said more sharply than she intended. Marcus nodded slowly. I wasn't offering charity. I was offering help. There's a difference. Angela felt something crack inside her chest. She was so tired of being strong, of holding it together, of pretending that everything was manageable when it clearly wasn't. And this stranger, this man with kind eyes and a daughter who looked at her like she mattered, was offering something she hadn't felt in a long time. Connection. The simple human acknowledgement that she wasn't invisible. She told him, not everything, but enough. The tumor. The medication. The impossible choice between her health and her rent. Marcus listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, how much is the medication? Angela shook her head. It's too much. I shouldn't have said anything. How much? She hesitated. Almost $4,000. Marcus exhaled slowly. He looked at his daughter, then back at Angela. Okay, he said. Let's take care of it. Angela blinked. What? Let's get your medication. I'll cover it. She stepped back like he'd slapped her. No, absolutely not. I don't even know you. You don't have to know me, Marcus said. You just have to let me help. I can't accept that kind of money from a stranger. Then don't think of it as accepting. Think of it as letting someone do something good. For once, please. There was something in his voice. A weight that suggested this wasn't just about her. Angela studied his face, saw the shadows under his eyes, the weariness that matched her own. She wondered what his story was. What had brought him to this pharmacy at this exact moment? Whether he believed in fate or coincidence or just the strange ways people's lives intersect when they're supposed to. Before she could argue further, Marcus walked to the counter and pulled out his credit card. He spoke quietly to the pharmacist, who glanced at Angela with surprise, then processed the payment. Angela stood frozen, watching this unfold like it was happening to someone else. When Marcus returned with the bag of medication, he placed it gently in her hands. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You don't have to thank me, Marcus said. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself. Get the surgery. Fight for your life. That's all the thanks I need. Angela's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do this for me? Marcus looked at his daughter, who was watching them both with wide, curious eyes. Because someone did it for us once. When Zoe was a baby, she got really sick. Meningitis. We didn't have insurance, and the bills were crushing us. A woman at the hospital, someone we'd never met, paid for part of her treatment. She said she'd lost her own daughter and couldn't stand to see another child suffer. She told me that kindness doesn't end with one person. It ripples out. And maybe someday I'd be in a position to pass it on. Angela wiped her eyes. I'll pay you back. I don't know how, but I will. Don't pay me back, Marcus said. Pay it forward. When you're healthy and strong again, help someone else who needs it. That's how this works. They exchanged phone numbers, though Angela wasn't sure why. Maybe so she could update him on her surgery. Maybe so she wouldn't feel so alone in all of this. Marcus and Zoe left the pharmacy hand in hand, and Angela stood there clutching the medication, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. She had the surgery 3 weeks later. It went better than expected. The tumor was removed, and though recovery was long and painful, Angela fought through it with a determination she didn't know she still had. She thought about Marcus often during those weeks, about his words, about the woman who'd helped his daughter, about the invisible thread connecting strangers, who choose kindness over indifference. 6 months after the surgery, Angela was back at work, stronger and healthier than she'd been in years. She started volunteering at a community center on weekends, helping seniors navigate medical bills and insurance claims, offering the kind of support she desperately needed. She thought about Marcus's advice constantly. Pay it forward. Don't let the kindness stop with you. But there was something else Angela wanted to do. She wanted to find the woman who'd helped Marcus's daughter all those years ago. She wanted to understand the full story, to see the beginning of the chain that had saved her life. So she asked Marcus for details, and together they started searching. It took months, but they found her. Her name was Lorraine, and she lived in a modest house on the outskirts of Grand Rapids. She was in her 70s now, her hair silver, her hands marked by age and arthritis. When Angela and Marcus showed up at her door and explained why they'd come, Lorraine's eyes filled with tears. She invited them in, served them tea, and told them about her daughter Simone, who died at age 7 from leukemia. She told them how the grief had nearly destroyed her, how she'd spent years wondering what the point of anything was if children could be taken so senselessly. But then one day, she'd been at the hospital visiting a friend and saw a young father weeping in the waiting room, clutching a sick baby drowning in bills he couldn't pay, and something in her broke open. She couldn't save her own daughter, but maybe she could save someone else's. "I never knew what happened to that baby," Lorraine said, looking at Marcus. "I never followed up. I just hoped she'd be okay." Marcus smiled, pulling out his phone. He showed her a photo of Zoe, now 9 years old, grinning in her soccer uniform. "She's more than okay," he said. "She's thriving. Because of you." Lorraine sobbed. Angela reached across the table and took her hand. They stayed for hours, sharing stories, weaving together the threads of their connected lives. Lorraine talked about Simone. Marcus talked about Zoe's recovery. Angela talked about her surgery and her new work helping others. And somewhere in that conversation, something beautiful emerged. The understanding that pain doesn't have to end in isolation, that grief can be transformed into grace. That one act of kindness given freely with no expectation of return can ripple outward in ways we'll never fully comprehend. Before they left, Lorraine asked them to do something. She asked them to write down their stories and share them, not for recognition, but so others would know that this kind of kindness is possible, that it's real, that it matters. Angela took that request seriously. She started speaking at community events, sharing her story, encouraging people to look out for one another. Marcus did the same, bringing Zoe along sometimes, teaching her that generosity isn't about wealth. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and acting on it. And the ripple continued. People who heard their stories started their own chains of kindness. A teacher who paid for a student's college application fees. A mechanic who fixed a single mother's car for free. A nurse who bought groceries for an elderly patient. Small acts, quiet acts, the kind that don't make headlines but change lives nonetheless. Angela still thinks about that night at the pharmacy. The desperation she felt. The resignation. The belief that her life had become a burden too heavy to carry. And then Marcus, a stranger with his own pain and his own story, choosing to see her, choosing to help, choosing to believe that her life was worth fighting for. She thinks about Lorraine too, and the unimaginable loss that could have turned her bitter but instead turned her generous. She thinks about Zoe, who will grow up knowing that kindness saved her life twice, once as a baby, and once when her father passed it on. The truth is, we all carry pain. We all face moments when the weight feels unbearable, when giving up seems easier than fighting, but we also carry the capacity for extraordinary compassion, for seeing beyond our own struggles, and reaching out to someone else who's drowning, for being the stranger who says, "Let me help," and means it. Angela learned that her voice mattered, that her life mattered, not because of what she accomplished or earned, but simply because she existed, because she was human, and that alone made her worthy of care. It's a lesson she carries with her every day, and one she shares with everyone she meets. If you're reading this, if you've made it this far, I want you to know something. Your life matters too. Your struggles are real and your pain is valid, but so is your capacity to give and receive kindness. We're all connected in ways we don't always see. One decision, one moment of compassion can change everything. Maybe you're the person who needs help right now. Maybe you're the person who can offer it. Either way, you're part of this story. We all are. So take a moment today to reach out, to see someone who feels invisible, to offer help without expecting anything in return, to be the Marcus in someone else's life, or the Lorraine, or the Angela who decides to keep fighting. Share your stories in the comments below. Tell us about a time someone helped you, or a time you helped someone else. Let's keep this ripple going. Let's remind each other that kindness isn't just a nice idea. It's a force that saves lives. And in a world that often feels cold and disconnected, that's everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, your voice matters. Your story matters. Don't ever forget that.